Hello everyone, let's talk about values-driven leadership today. And before we do that, I want to talk about who I am and why I'm qualified to even share what I have to share with you today. So one thing that I've been doing for 20 plus years, I like to say that I'm not a spring chicken, I'm a seasoned chicken, is strategy, marketing, and sales, especially online and offline for both big companies and entrepreneurs alike. And it's the only thing that I've been doing for those 20 plus years, which makes me not just uniquely qualified and a little crazy, but it also makes me obsessed with understanding why people make decisions and what motivates them to consume and buy things. And as a result of that, I've been able to build 3 8-figure companies helping corporations and entrepreneurs do the same. Now, I've been working with some incredible humans, both celebrities, thought leaders, corporations, and as I said, everyday entrepreneurs. People like Steve Harvey, Hillary Rushford, who is a huge Instagram influencer. You might recognize this person, Oprah Winfrey, and during the launch of the OWN network, I supported them in helping make sure they sent traffic to their new venture on cable. Amy Porterfield, who is the top expert in digital courses. Ryan Levesque, who is the top expert in quiz funnels. James Wedmore, who is the top expert in building a digital CEO business. Chris Winfield, who is the top PR person online. And although I'm showing you a lot of these accolades and the places that I've been, my team has been, as well as our clients have been, the main thing is that it's important to show how these people are so successful. And it comes from what values-driven leadership is, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. My company has actually been featured on all the major media channels, including being a top article on entrepreneur.com, being considered number 32 out of 360 small businesses in the United States, and ultimately, this is what matters to me the most. This is my family. And early in my career, I was a corporate executive. I didn't have my own business. I spent the first decade of my adult life working in a job that I was really good at, but I wasn't feeling purposed. And I decided when I took that leap into entrepreneurship and to teach other entrepreneurs to live a values-driven life, that I was going to stay in integrity and be that. And so I started to center all of my business activities around what my personal and core values were. And as a result of that, I've been able to create a life that I really actually like a lot. Not just love, because love is easy, but liking your life is a different level altogether. And so this is my incredible family. I get to work and play from the San Francisco Bay Area and also in Honolulu, Hawaii, where our family gets to enjoy our lives. But it wasn't all, guns and roses, if you will, leading up to this point. But what is true is that there is a universal truth to everything when it comes to decisions that we make. And that is that 100% of our experience of life is created inside of our mind. In fact, I like to say that the place you want to be and the place you are now, the length of that time is really about 6 inches between your ears. Okay? So if you understand that journey, and you want to be successful, keep listening to this training today. So here's the thing about successful people. There's 2 things that they are. First, they are unwavering at living their values, okay? And we're going to talk about how to do that in a moment. And number 2, they've been able to release their trauma. Now, this is a training for business people. So what does trauma have to do with anything? It has a lot to do with how you step into leadership. And so I'm going to talk about how you unpack that and put it together so that you can be a more effective leader, build a better brand, and build a very profitable and successful business while you're doing it. Because the bottom line is, as the visionary, as the person with the big idea, we are the biggest asset to our company. Now, in the long term, you don't want to become the obstacle and the challenge, but in the beginning, you are the visionary. You're the one that casts the vision. You're the one who's there to enroll people into that vision. And in order to do that, you have to learn how to protect the asset, and that's you. So here's one of the things that I see, especially online, on social media, on the internet, that I think is one of the biggest crimes being told to visionary people. And that is, it has to feel good for me to do it. I wish that were true. But if you study anyone who has been successful, read a book, listen to a podcast, watch a YouTube video of Warren Buffett or whoever you consider successful in the world, they never said it was easy. The key to living a values-driven life is that it has to be worth it. It's not about easy, it's not about hard, it's about worth it. And so, I don't know about you, but anytime I've really accomplished something big, the journey to that something big didn't feel good the whole time. It might have felt like I was getting the effort in, it might have felt like I was proud of the effort I put in, but there are things that I had to do, I had to reach for, that I had to put myself out there that didn't feel comfortable. And so when I hear this thing online, especially frankly for women, where it says if it doesn't feel good, then I'm not gonna do it, I think that's a huge, huge problem. So instead, I would like you to think of this line in a different way, and that is, it has to be aligned with my values for me to do it. Now, what does that mean? Well, it also means that your audience, that you're enrolling into your vision and you want them to buy your epic things, they need to see themselves aligned with your values too. And so it's critical, because they're gonna have to make hard decisions as well, right? When they choose to buy your thing, they're making a big decision by opening their wallet, by perhaps investing in something that they've never invested before. And so it's your opportunity as a leader to communicate your values in such a way that motivates, inspires, and transforms their relationship with their own lives so that both of you can be in that relationship. So this is the framework that is the core foundation of our work at the Master Brand Institute, and it's called the Values-Driven Mindset Framework. This is how we teach successful people how to lead even when times are tough, and also how to celebrate when things are going awesome. And there are a lot of ways to manage your mindset, and many of them I'm a big fan of. But what makes ours very special is it's all about the three parts of the visionary that are motivating them to do anything. And that is their vision, their voids, and their violations. That's the equation of how to come up with your true values. Now, I'd like to share some of our company's values with you to demonstrate how they end up being in print and communicated to the outside world. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna unpack how we got here, okay? To give you an idea of how you can implement the same for your organization, even if you're an organization of one right now, okay? So our core values are autonomy, justice, generosity, leadership, and legacy. And your values as a company are determined by the founder. They're not determined by the team. They're not determined by your audience. They're determined by the founder. And why is that? I want you to think of Apple, because most of us are familiar with that brand. When Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak got together in Steve Wozniak's garage, they were both living with their moms, okay? And decided to make this big idea come true. You know, Jobs was the visionary and Wozniak was the integrator. He was the engineering guy. He was the guy who knew how to put things together, very process-oriented, very technical. Jobs was the marketing guy. He had a big vision for how he was going to transform what he felt was a very outdated way to approaching technology and innovation for consumers. He cared more about consumers than he cared about big business. And anyway, when they were coming up with Apple, when you think about the journey that Steve Jobs was on, even up to the point of him leaving this earth, he went through a lot as the CEO. But the truth is that the vision for Apple lives on past his death. It's still here. In fact, if Apple has ever disappointed you, it's because most likely that his team perhaps may have gotten misaligned from their values, and consumers notice it right away. And so this is why it's the founder's vision. I mean, Sam Walton, who founded Walmart, you know, he's no longer around, but the values of Walmart are steadfast. It's what made Walmart big. And even if you're a solopreneur or you don't have a vision, because this is what's important, it's your vision, not anyone else's. If your vision is to just have a business that helps a lot of people and gives you a great lifestyle, but you're not interested in having a huge team and building the next Apple or Walmart, that's okay. But the core idea is that you want to make sure that the motivation is coming from you so that you can stay in the game even when times get tough. So let me describe our values, and obviously since I'm the founder of this company, these came specifically from me, and it was my job to be able to align my team as well as our audience around these values. So our first value is autonomy. So we produce extreme value that supports our clients' freedom and sovereignty and supports ours. The next is justice. We create and support conscious communities where everyone gets the opportunity to win and contribute. We advocate and invest in social and economic advancement. The next is generosity. We are abundant thinkers and givers. There's enough for everyone eating at the table. Nothing's missing or withheld. Leadership. Leadership of self governs leadership of others. We live our values and model integrity and excellence. And finally, legacy. Our example speaks louder than any word we leave behind. We're committed to generational wealth building and leaving an impact while we're here. Now, as I share our company values with you, I want you to ask yourself as you're listening, first of all, do you have values that you've established for your company? And are those values what I call vanity values? So values that someone told you, hey, you're building a brand, you're building a business, you should have something. You should have a mission, you should have a vision. And again, that's good, that's great. But the question is when I read our values to you, did you feel the intentionality and the sincerity behind it? Not just because I'm speaking it, but if you were to stumble across our work and read those values, and then took a look at the rest of the things that we did in our marketing, in our products, and you would start to see even subconsciously that all of these are baked into them on purpose, because it's all about making better decisions. Because successful people make decisions. I like to say that maybe is the devil. Maybe is like purgatory, right? And great leaders make big decisions. And in our campus, we call them clean yes and clean no decisions. Now, what happens for you as a leader when you start to make these decisions filtered through your highest values so that you never feel confused or indecisive around what has to happen next? Well, it allows you to eliminate friction, noise, overwhelm, stress that comes from decision fatigue. Back to Steve Jobs. You know, one of the reasons that he wore the same thing every single day. He owned like 12 black turtlenecks and 12 pairs of light denim jeans and a belt that he used every day. He drove the same car. And when they stopped making the model of Mercedes that he drove, he asked Mercedes to make him a custom one, okay? He didn't like extra decisions because he realized that took him out of his value zone, out of his vision pocket, okay? And I'm not saying that you need to be that type of person, because look, I like my shoes and I like my outfits, okay? I'm not about to like use the same thing every single day. But the point I'm trying to make is that the more decisions you have to make, the more distracted you are as a leader. And it doesn't allow you to give clear direction to your team. It doesn't free up your time to speak with various stakeholders who could help grow your business. It takes you out of pocket to be able to speak to your actual audience and for them to see your truth and your heart, in addition to your business acumen and savvy. So it's really important that you make these clean yes and clean no decisions, because decision fatigue is the killer of momentum and the blocker of impact. And so when you, though, lead from a values-driven place, which is something that I've worked really, really hard at doing myself as a founder and helping other founders like you listening to do. Because when people ask me, Jen, how are you so productive? How do you get so much done? And frankly, how are you so profitable and less triggered by all of the noise in the world? It's all about the values-driven framework for me, okay? So now it's your turn. I want you to take a moment, wherever you're listening to this, maybe pause it or just take a moment to ask yourself, what do you think your top 5 values are? And right now, don't eliminate anything. Don't edit yourself. Instead, just brainstorm. So when I say what you think your top 5 are, just throw them all out there and don't circle anything yet, don't pick anything yet, but just throw out words that you know match how you feel, okay, as a visionary. Now, I believe that part of the problem in today's world around success is that we are measuring the wrong things when it comes to success, and that includes corporations. Now, what I will say as a former executive in a Fortune 15 company, that I absolutely believe that we need key performance metrics and drivers of revenue and expense in our companies. We have to do that to stay viable and keep helping people. But when I'm talking about just being about those types of results, instead of actually being values driven, that's where you start to lose people. You know, they say it's more expensive to lose a person in your organization than it is to even hire one. And I don't know about you, but hiring is not easy either. Finding great team, great support, even great contractors is a struggle for most of us, whatever level you're at. And so part of it is because you are leading your company with just results that don't matter to the people. And instead, if you can put those results drivers under a values-driven framework, you're gonna start to see more sticky loyalty coming from your team. They're gonna see themselves owning the vision with you, and they're gonna understand the alignment to the people they're actually helping, which is outside of the 4 walls or the virtual world that you're working from, okay? So, we call this taking a look at your internal or your inner intention and your outer mechanism. So this is actually from Dr. John Demartini, who is one of the foremost leaders in the personal development space around values determination. So he has this entire diagnostic that he does. It's pretty lengthy, and I highly recommend it to you if you're listening in to take it. Now, one of the things that he says is when you live according to your highest values, you become inspired and awaken genius. When you live according to your lower values, you require continuous outside motivation and you suppress your genius. Your present purpose or mission for life will reflect your present highest values. This is powerful. Because, you know, I don't know about you, there are all these diagnostic tests you can take. Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, I have my own called the Brand AIM, the DISC, all these, the Colby, there's all these assessments, right? And many of them tell us if we're introverted or extroverted. Now, if you're listening, ask yourself, who am I? Am I an introvert or am I an extrovert? Are you a mix of the two? A lot of people think that I personally am an extrovert, and I actually identify way more on the introverted side. In fact, in all the testing that I've ever done, I'm actually an introvert. But as I started to do the values-driven framework, because people would also ask me, how can you get up on a stage? How can you actually speak to people? How can you lead a team? How can you have confidence? And I said, that's a good question. I don't know why I'm like that. But I started to get curious. And so I started really investigating what does it take for somebody to still be confident and decisive, even through fear, even through being in an environment that might not be the most supportive. And I realized that it was the 5 values that I mentioned to you my company stands for, autonomy, justice, generosity, leadership, and legacy, that I was living that way. And as a result of that, I feel inspired and extroverted to people when I'm speaking about how I help people. And so many times, so that's why I don't believe in introversion or extroversion. I believe that you do need space to recharge. And when you are speaking from a place of your highest values, everyone's gonna think that you're the biggest loudmouth in the room, even if you're typically quiet. And so what we say on our campus in determining our own values for our clients is your what's now reflects your present highest values and supports your what's next. So what that means is how you are behaving, how you are being, how you are leading is actually a reflection of your highest values, whether you like them or not. Whether you think those highest values are appropriate or businessy or too soft or too hard, the leader is living their highest values, and sometimes that's getting in your way. And the good news is you can shift them, and you can also what we call link them, okay? But here's possibly why they're your highest values now, but you want to shift them, and that's the next part. Remember in the values-driven framework, in the image that I shared with you, where I talked about values are about vision, violations, and voids. Well, here's the thing. Values come from the founder's voids. What do I mean by that? Well, your values arise from or are therefore determined by your conscious or unconscious voids, and that means what's missing from our lives. And that could have been from when we were a young person, or a young adult, or right now. Like maybe one of the voids is, no, I'm not as popular as I'd like to be, or my business is not as profitable as I'd like to be. Wow, that person frankly has less talent than our team, but they're crushing it. Whatever the perceived void is, okay, it's a void. It's something that feels like there's a gap or an empty space that you know you need to fill somehow, but you're still not there yet, okay? That's what a void is. And what you perceive as most missing, these voids, therefore become what you perceive as most important, which means they become a high value for you, okay? A lot of people want to avoid their voids. That's why it's called a void, okay? But really, it's an important ingredient that as leaders, we need to have, frankly, an adult, grown-up conversation with our voids, you know, even though we probably makes us feel like young people inside around like, ooh, I'm gonna have a tantrum around this thing, like my finances, or I'm gonna have a tantrum around, you know, dealing with that difficult conversation with an employee, you know? And so I'll give you an example, because I'm a grown-up. I've been doing this thing for 20 plus years, and yet I'm still the daughter of a Filipino mother. She is a self-proclaimed tiger mom. And I know, Mom, if you're listening, don't be mad at me. We all know the truth here, okay? I love you and respect you. And here's an example of a void as a young person that as I did this values-driven work on myself, I realized was affecting my business. And so let me give you an example. When I was younger, my mom would do the bills once a month, you know, when people used to write checks and all that kind of stuff. And so literally she would, you know, get into the kitchen. Nobody was allowed in the kitchen during bill paying time. And she'd have all the bills put out, and she had like this ledger that she would write with a pencil, and then she had her checkbook. And we were not allowed to come in, as I said, to the kitchen when she would be doing this practice every month. And so I remember one time as a young girl, being the rebel that I was, still pushing my way into the kitchen and saying, I want to see what you're doing. Can you teach me what you're doing? And my mom said to me, these are things that young people don't have to worry about. Go outside and play, right? And so the crazy thing is my mom was actually encouraging me to not be an adult and to go play, but I planted that in my psyche as a young person and thought that meant that when I grew up, I had to be secretive about my finances to everyone, including my own children, and even in my business. And as a result of that, in 2008, when I had taken the leap from corporate to entrepreneurship and built my own retail empire, truly, I had multiple commercial properties, but then the recession came, it was because I had so much secrecy around my finances that I wasn't in charge. And I linked that all the way back to that conversation with my mom. Again, my point here, that's why I said, hey, what is this whole releasing trauma thing? You know, there's two types of trauma. There's what we call the big T trauma and the small t trauma, right? And the big T's, you know, those are the big things, right? But a lot of people don't realize that these small T traumas, they're like what I call death by paper cut, okay? They've taken swipes at you and you don't even know how literally you're spilling out opportunity from these little cuts over time. So as a leader, if you understand this and go, oh my gosh, no wonder my finances have never been a high value for me, but actually they were. Avoiding them was my highest value. And once I figured that out, I could shift and link the parts I didn't like, that didn't feel good, getting honest with, ooh, I'm really good at making money, but keeping it and growing it was not my jam. This was back, 10 years ago. But when I got honest with that and I started doing this work on myself, things totally changed. And now I'm really proud to say that my company, for the size it is one of the most profitable companies in my industry, because we know how to make it, we know how to keep it, we know how to grow it now. But that took me shifting my value around it and getting honest with it. So that's just an example, because here's the thing. Your underlying private voids, the ones you're keeping all to yourself that no one knows about, drive your overlying public values. And voids are mainly caused by trauma, small t, big T, that may have not been released. And this is why I'm a big fan, it's a little controversial, but I don't care, that leaders see therapists and not just coaches. I believe in coaching and I believe in therapy. They're two different things. Because we need to release some of this stuff so we can get honest with it and we can make a shift and then create our highest values from a place that will actually grow our company and help more people. So the next piece, the next ingredient of building your values is looking at your violations. Now, what's the difference between violations and voids? Well, your values arise from and are therefore determined by circumstances and stories where something happened that violated what you deemed valuable in the past, okay? And possibly currently. So here's an example of a violation, and it's different than a void. A void is what's missing. A violation is something happened to you that offended what you thought your highest values were at the time. So for example, when I was in the corporate world, the occurring event that happened that I took the leap from corporate to entrepreneurship was actually a violation. I've been promised a promotion after leading a huge project, $1 billion project for my last company that I worked for. And when the time came for the promotion to happen, and I had no idea that it wasn't going to be happening because it had been promised to me up to the day that I literally found out I wasn't getting it. And I was passed up for that promotion. And in that moment, I thought that my highest values were ambition and family. I was a very ambitious, ladder climbing executive. I took on all the projects that no one wanted so I could get seen and heard in organizations. And I wanted it with the baseline that I had 2 young daughters that I wanted them to see that their mom was a working woman who was really proud. And so for me, I thought those were my 2 highest values. Now, I didn't call them that at the time, but looking back, I realized that was it. But what happened was, when I got passed out for this promotion, I realized, those aren't my highest values. My highest value is control. And what I mean by control is control over my future, was freedom to be able to, if I did good work, that I would be paid proportionately for that work. That if I put in effort, that I could control and throttle the ebb and flow of the reward. And in the corporate world, I didn't have that power. I had prestige, I had a title, I had a parking spot with my name on it, I had a very good 6-figure salary and a bonus structure that was the bomb, okay? I hit it every quarter, right? But I realized that no matter what I did, I was not making the decisions. I wasn't the CEO of that business. And so I realized that my highest value of all was autonomy and justice, which now you see is a top 5, because it didn't feel fair, which is justice, right? And it didn't feel autonomous. I didn't have that control, that ability to make my own life happen. And so I took that leap. I mean, I was crazy at the time, obviously, but this is the thing. If you're an entrepreneur, or you're worried because you're a leader in an organization, you're worried that your people want to leave, it's partly because you're not being values driven, because you can get great people to stay if they see how their values fit in to the bigger organization. Because actually entrepreneurship is a lot. Well, I think both sides are risky, is how I would say it. It's just a choice. It's back to what is the values that you hold, right? There's no good or bad decision. There's only clean and not clean decisions. That's the whole point of being values driven. So what you perceive as violating your values, but you haven't been able to remedy or heal that part of your life, therefore becomes what you perceive as most important, which is a value. So then you have to decide, is that value still serving me as a leader? Is it going to allow me to attract great people into my life, team, clients, even frankly your personal life? It's all connected, right? And so your underlying private violations drive your overlying public values. And violations are mainly caused by trauma that hasn't been released. Because that was traumatic for me, for my boss, for me to work so hard. I mean, I like to say, when I was in the corporate world, I was that person whose corner office in the big skyscraper, the light was on at 8 p.m. You know, I had other people watching my kids and figuring things out and trying to navigate like an octopus, right? To still show up as the top dog in the pound, if you will, right? And that was traumatic for me to be promised that, and I'm not mad. And that's the difference, is like you can then look at those experiences and instead of feeling like a martyr or a victim to it, you can be grateful. Because that violation allowed me to see a bigger vision for my life. And that vision for my life allows me to be a bigger visionary for my team and for my clients and for the world. So in the moment, was I mad? Absolutely, right? But it's about what do you do post that? And if you know your values and you live this way, you'll start to see things a little differently. And you won't try to bypass the emotion, you'll get honest and be with it so that you can make a different change. So ultimately, how do you deal with these voids and violations? Because now, as you're listening to this, you're like, oh my God, I need therapy right now. Okay, I get it, and I understand that. But I want to give you a little thing that you can even self-remedy some of this just by knowledge, right? But again, I highly encourage anyone who thinks that they need it, please. We should get rid of the stigma and shame around therapy, support, coaching, help, mentorship. Great leaders get mentors. The kings and queens of Silicon Valley, right? They all have executive coaches. And trust me, they all have therapists too. Because great leaders get help. They get help where they have gaps. Because remember, the void is the gap. The violation is the gap. So that's where you get help. Too many times, leaders try to invest in things they don't need, which is already what they know. You have experience, you have expertise. But what happens is, you feel like I need to get better at that instead of actually dealing with the gaps so that you can be a more effective leader. So here are the 3 people inside of us that are making decisions for us, okay? Yes, we have multiple personalities inside of us. Yes, we do. The wounded child, the adapted child, and the functioning adult. So the wounded child is the child who felt some type of big T trauma to them. You know, one of the things, I'm a parent, and so I always tell my children, I'm so sorry because there are things I'm doing that I don't even know that's probably gonna mess you up, because now I know better as an adult, right? I had no idea as a young parent that I was doing some of those things. And even if you're like one of the best, gold star parents out there, we can't control how our kids will perceive that. I gave you the example of me and my mom, who actually her come from was go out and play. You don't have to worry about these big adult issues. I want you to just have fun. And for me, it was like, you're keeping things from me. You're being secretive. I'm not included. That was what I saw. And so that's me being the wounded child. Now, whenever I'm dealing with finances in our business and I start to feel that wounded child come up, I know what it's coming from. Now, the adapted child is the second level. Now, she's the tricky one. She's the one who's smart. She's the one wearing the costume called the functioning adult. Because the adapted child is the child who survived and thrived by making up a story about why that happened. And it's actually helped them get through stuff as an adult. So for me, it was like my adaptive child, just using me as an example, was when I was crashing and burning in 2008 when the recession came, and I was scared out of my wits and really I had so much shame around it. I didn't feel like I could talk to my parents around it because I'm an Asian, and so for my whole thing was like, oh my God, we're good at money, okay. And I wasn't, right? And I thought, okay, the way I'm gonna get through this is how I always get through it, which is I'm gonna figure it out. And I tried to figure it out on my own for 6 months. And if I would have been a functioning adult instead of an adaptive child, I would have early on said, I need help. I need support. I need to open my mouth because I don't know what to do. And instead, I kept trying to get my business out of the glut it was in, and nothing I could have done would have gotten me out of that rut, because this was, every small business during that time really lost almost everything, especially if you were in real estate or retail, which I was in both of those industries. And if I would have cut the bleeding earlier, I wouldn't have lost so much. I probably wouldn't have lost my house, and I wouldn't have lost my marriage. And why do I bring these things up? Because this is supposed to be a business course or business talk. Because it took me out of the game for a year. It made me lose my confidence. In fact, the number one thing an entrepreneur or a leader needs to protect is their confidence, and not the fake boastful confidence, not the saccharine-filled confidence, not the patriarchal, taught to us confidence. No, just the confidence of our own self-esteem and our ability to pick ourselves up. This is critical. And so for me, my adopted child was running the show in 2008, because she was saying, we're going to figure this out and we're not going to fail, and convinced me that that was true. But that wasn't the truth. That was a void that I was trying to fill with that type of coping mechanism. So now, what is the type of leader, values-driven leader, do we need to focus on being? It's the functioning adult part of us. Now, I'm not saying we can't fall back into wounded and adaptive, because you know what? The adaptive child especially they've proven their existence and their value to us. They've helped us get through stuff. So I'm not saying that we should just say, don't run the show anymore. It's more, be aware when they're running the show, so that you can make a better decision. You can make a cleaner decision for where you got to move next. Because being a functioning adult doesn't mean you can't still be childlike. It just means don't be childish, right? We want to be creative. We want to be able to have fun. We want to celebrate things. Nobody likes hanging around with a stodgy, grumpy person. Somebody who always feels like the boss all the time. But we want to make decisions from a functioning adult place. And that's the value of being a values-driven leader. So these perceptions, beliefs, and judgments against yourself, which are creating the voids and violations around the areas of wealth and money, relationships, health, and yourself and spiritual beliefs, are probably what, if you shore up, your whole life's going to change. It sounds kind of fantasy-like, but it's actually true. Trust me, I'm here standing in front of you knowing that this stuff works, because voids and violations aren't the bad parts of you. They're not the parts of you that deserve shame or disappointment. They're informative. They're true. They happened, right? And they need to be considered if you want to not be stuck while you grow your business. They are just as important as your vision. Because a lot of times we're told, write your vision down, have your mission, do your business plan. These are all good things. These are necessary tactics. But this right here, this is a leadership strategy for your life. Okay? And so we want our functioning adult to make our business decisions. So how do we do that? Well, we have to get honest with the courage, attitude, ownership, and values, ultimately, that it takes to build your business confidently, because then we'll take action with the mindfulness and the momentum of a pro. Now let me talk about courage. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is doing it even if there is fear present. That's what courage is. In fact, courage wouldn't exist without fear. So they're in a great marriage. Not dysfunctional, as many people think. They have value. Both sides have value, right? There's a big difference between fear and danger. If you have a toddler around and the toddler goes and sticks their finger into the socket in the wall, that's dangerous, right? That's dangerous. Going out to the freeway and standing in the middle of it with a sign, your political sign, is dangerous, okay? It's not the same thing as fear. Like becoming an entrepreneur, making the choice to lead an organization, speaking your truth, living in your values. Those may be fearful, but they're not dangerous. And that's the difference. The next piece is attitude. I always say, even on my team, we hire more for attitude than we do than skill set. Because anything can be taught, but the attitude of my contribution here is bigger than me is so much more important. And part of the way that you get your team and your clients to be transparent and honest with you about what that is to encourage them to know what their values are too, so that you can link them. I get this question a lot. Well, if I have values and then my team has values, then they're gonna wanna go do their own thing and not work here, right? And no, that's not true. You tell your values and then you link their values with yours, even on their performance reviews. Like that should be an entire new section on their performance review, because obviously you have to hit your revenue numbers, you have to hit your expense numbers, you have to hit your customer satisfaction numbers, right? These are important metrics to be a viable company, as I said earlier. But if it's not linked to this person's values, if they had linked my values of ambition and family back then, I might still be in the corporate world today and very happy being that. And I think that being values driven and having a leadership style that encourages both, you're gonna have innovation and a place to work that everyone is gonna wanna be a part of. Because they're gonna see it and they're gonna see how their personal values link with the company values. That's the attitude piece of things. And then the ownership. Ownership is actually about leadership of self. You know, leadership is one of our top values, and we mean leadership of self when we say that. Because we believe if you can lead yourself, then the others will come. And so that takes three things: your ownership of your time, your energy, and your money. Because when you manage your time, energy, and money right, you will put your attention in the right places and make better decisions. So, and then when you wrap that all up with being very clear on your values and using that as the decision-making filter to make clean yes or clean no decisions, you become unstoppable. And so, now that I've described voids, if you were to think of a few, what would they be? Choose 5 of them as you brainstorm. Take a few minutes to do that. And then the next one is, what are 5 things that violate what you believe your top 5 values are? So I'll give you an example. Autonomy being our top value in this company. Any program, project, or person that makes us as a team feel like we are constricted from doing bigger things is a clean no. Even if it comes with a big check, okay? We are a clean no, and we've said no to literally hundreds of thousands of dollars using this. But you know what's come in return? Millions of dollars to be able to then make a bigger impact. Now, I'm not saying that this process is easy, but it becomes exciting when you learn how to use it. Justice, for example. We believe in the equity and equality of all people. And we believe that our job is to create tables that not just everyone can sit at, but that we'll give them the tools to build their own and invite their own people to their tables. And so when things are happening in the world, whether it's political or the conversation around Black Lives Matter, we are not apologetic or quiet about where our company stands, because then the audience can choose whether or not we're their people. And there's no judgment, maybe a little, but not a lot, because it's a clean decision on our part and theirs too. If we keep things ambiguous for our own comfort, that's the wounded or adaptive child making you feel like you need some type of outside force to motivate you to stay in the game. But when you start to live your values, you find all this time and energy you've never felt before. So generosity is one of our values. That has been one of my values since I was a young girl. It actually comes from voids and violations, to be honest with you. I grew up with my mom and dad had to work. I was a latchkey kid, and I didn't have many friends growing up. In fact, I was very bullied as a young person. I had these big ideas, and my 3 most favorite people were, 2 were on TV and 1 was in my house. The 2 people on TV were Wayne Dyer and Mr. Rogers. Because Wayne Dyer was the first person I had seen on TV that talked about possibility and being intentional about what you wanted in your life. And Mr. Rogers taught me that even when people are cruel, be kind. And then the third person was my grandmother. Her name is Generosa. Her mom named her right, because my grandmother was like, our house was the hub of the neighborhood. Everybody came by to say hi and bring vegetables and fruits and like exchange funny stories. And they were all a bunch of immigrants who worked really hard in the sugar plantations in Hawaii, but they were always happy. And here I was feeling like an outsider. And one of the things that I tell people about my value of generosity is that my grandmother taught me that there is nothing that you know that belongs to you. It belongs to everyone. And when I grew up in the business world, I was taught the absolute opposite. Like, keep an open loop, restrict people from knowing what you know so that they can move on to the next step. And there is marketing strategy and all those types of things that you have to think about and be intentional in your business. But there's nothing that I know that cannot be shared. And so when I learned that, the more generous I became, the more clients we actually got because of the way that I was generous, because of the way that I did it in alignment with my values. Not in the way that I thought I needed to be because somebody taught me that from a business training or a webinar, was actually from my grandma reminding me that there's nothing that I have that can't be shared because it can't hurt me, because what I know can only help people, right? So then there's leadership, which I talked about earlier, of how leadership of self dictates leadership of others on our campus. So learning this value stuff is critical for people who want to work with us. We're like, you need to know this and you need to apply it to your own life, because then we're going to have a common lexicon that we can talk about when you're struggling. We can say, are you out of your values right now? What's happening? We have now a tool to be able to self-assess you as the leader, not look at, hey, what's wrong with the team? What's wrong with the clients? What's wrong with my marketing? What's wrong with my products? It's not that there's anything wrong, but there's something happening inside of you as the leader, because water always runs down the hill, not up, right? And then finally, legacy. For me, it's important to not just leave a legacy from when I'm gone, but it's to leave a legacy right now. Every day is an opportunity to make an impact. And so instead of worrying about a far-off future, even though I have the future in my mind, because my future self expects me to have that, every day I'm asking myself, did I make an impact today? In fact, one of the last things that each one of the people in our team, and you can use this as well if it helps you, we say before I close our eyes every night, it's kind of a ritual for our team, is, what made you proud today? And sometimes we'll share it with each other inside of our Slack channel, or, just to remind us, even on hard days, if you do at least one thing that makes you proud, including, it doesn't have to be business related. For me, it's like that I was on my Peloton, whatever it is, okay? So that's how it works. Now, let's talk about vision. So your vision is your future self. It's the person that's been waiting for you, okay? So rather than being driven by passion, truly confident human beings will follow their mission inspired by their highest values and most integrated self. And that vision is determined by your future self. And that's the next ingredient in creating your values-driven mindset. So the key thing here is that your vision or your future self is a visionary, not a fantasizer, okay? This distinction is critically important in staying clear, clean, and confident in your decisions as you grow your business. So what's a fantasizer? A fantasizer is the person that says, it has to feel good for me to do it. Because they're living in the fantasy of, if it's hard, it must be something that's against me. I believe that grit is an ingredient to success. And again, show me a person who's successful that hasn't experienced trauma, obstacles, challenges, breakdowns, and I will show you somebody who's lying, okay? So a fantasizer, and many of you, if you're listening to this video, if you're in a seat where you're deciding what your next step is, do I want to continue pursuing a corporate or work for someone because I feel like their greater mission does align with my values, or am I considering starting my own company, which many of you who contact me want to know about? I want you to remember your vision, not your fantasy. In fact, to me, entrepreneurship is a way harder gig than working in the corporate world or for the government. Over there, there's predictable process. Over there, there's decisions. Over there, there's more people to help, right? You can hide behind some of the red tape and the politics. When you're an entrepreneur, it's on you. But if one of your highest values is autonomy, freedom, liberty, any of those things, entrepreneurship might be a great deal for you. Just know that it's going to come with some grit. and some issues. And that's where if you become a visionary instead of a fantasizer, you're gonna appreciate the journey a lot more. But too many people are being fed online especially, which really frustrates me as a veteran of the business world, because this is not participation trophy time, okay? This is you understanding and training yourself just like an Olympic athlete would do to win the gold medal. This is the gold medal Olympics of your life if you choose to be an entrepreneur. And it doesn't mean that you have to hurt other people to get there. You just have to be values driven. That's the key distinction. So a visionary would say, I am the person who will be making this contribution in the world while I'm here, and their actions align with empowering links to their vision, voids, and violations in pursuit of that dream. They act bravely as the future self that they've casted, right? A fantasizer would say, I can do what the outliers do without the emotional change that's rigorous but worthwhile to make the contribution in the world while I'm here. And their actions align with past disempowering stories of voids and violations. They are living their past self. A visionary lives their future self. They chart their way forward, right? They're not stuck. When I say I can do what the outliers do, look, I'm a marketer, so you don't have to believe me, but marketers market programs, products, and services to the outliers, meaning, look, I've made 7 figures in 7 weeks. Look, I've sold 1 million units of this brand new amazing product on Instagram, okay? There are people who have done that, but they're like this many. They are the outlier. They are the exceptional. They are the exception to the rule. Most of us, including me, had to actually test, try, and do things so that I could land on something that works. But a fantasizer will be like, oh, I'm gonna join this program, or I'm gonna do this thing, and I'm gonna make 7 figures like my idol does. Fantasizers tend to idolize. They choose gurus to follow them, to follow, instead of going, I will get the resources, the mentors, the help that actually help me fill the voids so that I can live in my vision. I think Mr. Matthew McConaughey says it best when he said, he was asked when he accepted the Academy Award for his role, he was asked, you know, who's your hero? Who did you model your life after? And he said, my hero is myself 10 years in the future. He said, 10 years ago, I made a promise to myself that I was going to do everything I could to win an Oscar. And so he aligned his actions, his decisions, and all that to make that come true. Now, can I promise that that happens for all of us? No, because there's also that saying, this or something better, right? For Matthew McConaughey, all right, he got what he had planned, right? And I can sit in front of you right now, or stand in front of you rather, and say that I have too. I still have more to go. I still have more contribution to make. And I don't even know what the next season is going to unveil for me. But what I do know is that as I embark on it, that I'm honoring the visionary in me and understanding that my future self is counting on that to make my dreams come true. And so vision is be your own hero. Nobody else is your hero. You're your own hero. And being values driven means chasing your own future, not somebody else's. Okay? So here's how you write or become your future self, like a little exercise for you. So you're gonna write a short bio of your life, 500 words or less, because we're not here to like write an autobiography, although if that's one of your goals, go for it, okay? But I want you to write a short bio of your life to your past self. So from your birth to today, the moment that you're learning this, okay? And put the biography together. What happened? I was born on February 25th, blah, 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 and this is what I did, okay? Next piece is future self. From tomorrow, now that you have this newfound information, till the end of your life on this earth. What is that gonna read, okay? And then I want you to write a love letter. I know, this is a business training, right? But write a love letter to your future self. Thank yourself for what you were willing to do to make your future self real. And then read it back to yourself in your present self and say, I got you. I got you. And put that letter somewhere, maybe somewhere for your descendants, your family to find later. Maybe you read it and open it before that time comes, and you'll really see if you've been living a values-driven life and have stepped into that leadership role of your own life that you've always wanted. So this biography and love letter are your vision. They're your vision, okay? Your voids and violations along with this vision make you values-driven. And when you use this as a filter for your clean yes and clean no decisions and link your goals and focus to it, you become unstoppable. So how do we bring this all together? Well, there are 13 questions to audit your highest values, which I will give to you. You'll see it linked up to this particular training. How to live your values-driven life successfully and how to finalize those top 5 values. What I've wanted to teach you up until this point is really what it all means, get you thinking, get you brainstorming, and then we'll help you finalize it in the next step. So here are the 13 questions, actually. How do you fill your physical space? How do you spend your time? How do you spend your energy? How do you spend your money? Where are you the most organized? Where are you the most reliable? What dominates your thoughts? What do you visualize the most? What do you most often talk to yourself about? What do you most often talk to others about? What inspires you? What goals stand out in your life and have stood the test of time? What topics do you love to study, read about, or research? These 13 questions, if you notice them, this is how you filter your top values, because remember you brainstormed a bunch before. These 13 questions are kind of the filter that help you find your top 5, okay? Because guess what? This is going to be a little bit of an ouchie for some of you. Where you spend your time, energy, and money is what your highest values are, period. Whether you like it or not, the good news is you get to change, right? If you're doing things that you know are not in alignment with who your future self wants to be, these questions will root those out, and you can look with a functioning adult set of glasses that you've put on at what they are, and then you want to be honest and say, these are my current highest values. And maybe they're great, maybe there's something you want to change. And so the only way to change it is to be it. You can't just change it by saying it. You have to change it and say, I'm going to change these behaviors that link up to these values so that I can get what I want. Also, be aware when you are living by someone else's values. You know how you find that out? If you ever use these words in communicating what you do. Should, ought, supposed, need, or must. This is what I should do. This is what I ought to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I need to do. This is what I must do. These words, when you say it to yourself, typically it's not we're even telling other people. We're just saying it to ourselves, right? We're shitting on ourselves, right? These words tell you that you're out of bounds with your values, that you're actually not living them. You're out of bounds. So why? Because this is outside motivation. This is outside influence. So you have to reset, why am I saying I must do this? And sometimes it's something you do need to do, let's say it. Like, because it's, again, one of those hard things potentially you'll have to get through to get to the other side. But is the need coming from a place because somebody else taught you, you need to do it? And there's discernment and nuance in this, guys, because obviously, like, if you hire a mentor or, a teacher and their stuff is working for you, it's not like, oh, they told me to do it, so I shouldn't do it, okay? It's all about nuance and discernment. But the point is that if you live your life by outsiders saying this to you, that's what you're looking for. Also, be aware when these words are dominating your action or inaction. So, ready, arrived, and certain. Those 3 words are not real words. Well, they are, but they're not. And what I mean by that is you're never going to be fully ready. Show me a successful person that was fully ready before they got successful. I'll show you a liar. Arrived. None of us have arrived. There's no such thing. Actually, point B is a myth. There's only point A because once you hit one milestone in the journey, you've just created another point A again. So it's really you're going from point A to point A, okay? So you're never fully arrived. The last time we will arrive at anything is when we're 6 feet under or cremated and thrown out to the sea, whatever, okay? So, and then certain. Remember I told you that I realized that one of my top values was control, AKA autonomy, but that doesn't mean I'm certain. That just means that at least I can take full responsibility for my actions. And that motivates me, right? Certainty is a myth. In fact, 2008 and 2020 are perfect examples of uncertain. And the key to be stable and future-proof during uncertain times is to realize it was never certain to begin with. And to realize that you have actually everything inside of you, if you're values-driven, to recover from anything, truly. Also, check if you're experiencing what we call the ABCDs of negativity. So A is anger and aggression, B is blame and betrayal, C is criticism and challenge, and D is despair and denial. If you're feeling any of these things as you're making decisions or you're going through stuff, you're probably not living your values. So you want to ask yourself, hey, what am I resenting right now? Why am I resenting it? It's violating my values, right? Great, so I can decide not to embark in that. I can decide to put a boundary around that. I can decide to leave that thing or person or whatever, right, that does not allow me to live my highest values. And you can also be a grown-up, AKA functioning adult around it, by having those critical conversations that we avoid because we're too scared to confront issues, right? But values-driven leaders can have clean, empathetic conversations with people, even if it doesn't always land well on the other person. You can't control other people, you can only control yourself. So, also, if you feel the 3 R's challenging you, which is resentment, resistance, and revenge. Okay, so this one is really powerful. In fact, I have a meditation I even do around these 3 R's. And a lot of people think resistance is the first thing that happens when you're afraid of something, but it's actually not true. It's resentment that's happening first. So if you're resisting something, the question to ask yourself is, what am I resenting right now? And typically it's a void or a violation that's messing with your values. This changed everything for me when I started to realize, oh, my resistance is about resentment. So what is that? What am I resenting? Because ultimately what it leads to is revenge, which means self-sabotage. That means your adaptive child usually, making up a story that if we just sabotage this thing, then we can justify anything, right? Because that protects us from a hard conversation or something that I'm worried I'll get rejected from, right? So it's really resentment. So like, for example, for me, when I was passed up, when I noticed like I don't get like a contract in our company that I was sure we were gonna get, and I get resistant to putting the contract, this has happened to me where literally people will say to me, I wanna work with you, and I'll say, sure, great, work with my team, we'll get you a contract, and I won't even tell my team about it. This was happening to me like a few years ago, where I wouldn't even tell my team to send the contract. And then they would find out later and would say, what happened there? And I was like realizing, oh no, I was resenting that moment when I actually didn't get the promotion, and I was like saying, what if I send them the contract and then they ghost me, which had happened in the past. And I was assigning that, like the adaptive and wounded child, deciding that for me, instead of being a grown-up about it and saying, oh, sure, and whether or not they say yes, it's not on me, because I've done my part, right? So, finally, how do you link your actions to your future self? Well, these are some of the commitments that we make as a values-driven leader. So, I do what it takes today to create my values-driven tomorrow. I work really hard to make my life easy. It's one of my favorites. When everybody says, oh, like you have such a wonderful life, I'm like, yeah, I work really hard to make my life easy, because it's true. Flow comes from linking actions to my highest values. So back to like, it has to feel good, it has to flow for me to do it. I always say, okay, great. Flow comes from linking on the ground action. Because the more you're in action, the more momentum you get. And when momentum happens, it can't be stopped. It can only be stopped by you, right? That's what flow is. I keep my word to myself. That's called integrity. Integrity isn't about your word to someone else, although it can be. It's more about your word to yourself. When are you lying to yourself? When are you letting yourself down? When are you letting yourself off the hook? And then finally, saying, I am a coachable person and not a fragile person. Vulnerability and fragility are not the same thing. Vulnerable, empathetic leaders are needed in this world more than ever. But fragility is what allows other people to feel like they can't be honest with you. And it creates massive problems in leadership. You can see it around the world, in politics, in some of the biggest companies, and then as everyday people, we're frustrated with that, but it's because we've actually allowed fragility to be something that is accepted. Vulnerability is what we really need in leadership. So now it's your turn, after you've done these exercises, to determine what your top 5 values are and to describe them as I did mine early in this training. So you're going to go ahead and put your value. For me, autonomy is one, and then what is the description, right? So ultimately, as I wrap up, learning how to be a values-driven leader, I hope that you see the benefit to not just your own self, but to the organization that you're building, to the impact that you want to make, to the people that have been wishing and praying that your company would find them. If you live a values-driven life, you're not only going to grow a massively impactful and profitable company, you're going to feel great doing it. Thank you.